My sibling has been telling my doctor I'm a drug seeker for my entire adult life. The recording on my phone was still playing when I had to pull over to the side of Highway 101, my hands shaking too badly to grip the steering wheel. My sister Jennifer's voice, tinny through the speaker, was confessing to 15 years of systematic medical sabotage with the casual tone she usually reserved for discussing weekend grocery runs. I mean, come on Sarah, you were always Mom's favorite, she was saying, completely unaware I was recording our weekly Wednesday check-in call. Someone had to keep you grounded. You think I was going to let you become some pill-popping mess like cousin Derek? The irony was suffocating. Derek had been a recreational user who got clean years ago, while I could barely get Tylenol 3 prescribed for the herniated discs that had been documented in my medical files since 2008. But apparently, in Jennifer's mind, preventing her little sister from accessing legitimate pain management was some kind of twisted public service. So you actually called Dr. Martinez's office? I had asked, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was hammering. You told them I was, what exactly? Doctor shopping. Exhibiting drug-seeking behavior. I just gave them a heads up about your history. Her voice carried that familiar note of smug satisfaction that I'd been hearing since childhood whenever she tattled on me to our parents. Sarah, I'm a registered nurse. When I call with concerns about a patient, they listen. They certainly had listened. Dr. Martinez had dismissed me as a patient after just 2 appointments, claiming my pain levels were inconsistent with imaging results. Dr. Chen before him had refused to prescribe anything stronger than ibuprofen for pain that left me sobbing on my bathroom floor at 3 a.m. Dr. Williams had actually made a note in my chart about potential substance abuse concerns, despite 3 clean drug screenings. I'd thought it was bad luck. A series of unsympathetic doctors in a medical system increasingly paranoid about the crisis. I blamed myself, wondering if I was somehow communicating desperation in a way that raised red flags. I'd practiced in mirrors how to describe my pain professionally, clinically, without emotion that might be misconstrued as manipulation. How many doctors, Jennifer? I managed to ask, watching a semi-truck thunder past my parked car. How many times did you call? Oh, I don't know. Whenever you mentioned starting with someone new. Dr. Patterson, Dr. Kim, that pain specialist in San Jose, what was his name? Dr. Rodriguez? Look, someone had to look out for you since you clearly weren't thinking straight. 16 doctors. I'd seen 16 doctors since my car accident at 22, and apparently my own sister had been calling ahead like some kind of medical grim reaper, poisoning every potential therapeutic relationship before it could begin. The worst part wasn't even the physical pain, though the constant ache in my lower back had shaped every decision I'd made for over a decade. It was the gaslighting. The creeping self-doubt when doctor after doctor treated me like a liar. The shame spirals after appointments where I'd been lectured about alternative pain management and sent home with pamphlets about meditation. Jennifer was still talking, but I'd stopped listening. My finger found the stop button on the recording app, saving nearly 18 minutes of her casual admission to destroying my medical reputation across 3 counties. 15 years of medical records suddenly made perfect, terrible sense. The recording had ended, but I sat in my car for another 20 minutes, watching the digital clock flip from 2:47 to 3:07 p.m. while my entire adult life reorganized itself in my mind like puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. Dr. Patterson's office, 2019. The receptionist who wouldn't meet my eyes when she handed me the dismissal letter, mumbling something about practice policies and patient compatibility. I'd assumed it was about my insurance. Dr. Kim, 2020. The way she'd stiffened when I mentioned my pain levels, how she'd immediately started asking about my support system and whether I had a history of substance issues in my family. I'd been confused by the questions then, wondering why she was asking about addiction when I'd come in for back spasms. Dr. Rodriguez at the Peninsula Pain Institute, just last year. The consultation I'd waited 4 months to get, only to have him spend the entire appointment asking about my previous attempts to obtain controlled substances, instead of looking at my MRI results. He'd actually pulled up some kind of database on his computer, frowning at the screen like he was reading about a career criminal instead of a graphic designer who'd never even gotten a speeding ticket. There are some flags in your record, Miss Chen, he'd said, using my maiden name even though I'd been married to David for 3 years by then. Multiple attempts to establish care for the same condition. Several providers have expressed concerns. I'd left that appointment feeling like a pariah, convinced there was something fundamentally wrong with how I communicated pain. David had found me crying in our kitchen that night, trying to explain why I felt like such a failure at being sick. Now I understood. The flags weren't about my behavior at all. They were Jennifer's handiwork, a paper trail of false reports that followed me from office to office like a scarlet letter stitched into my medical records. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found David's number. He picked up on a second ring. Hey babe, how did lunch with Jennifer go? You sound weird. David, I need you to sit down. I could hear him moving around his office, probably closing his door. Remember how we've always wondered why my doctors treat me like I'm faking? Why they act like I'm some kind of drug addict before they even examine me? Sarah, what happened? You're scaring me. It's been Jennifer. This whole time. She's been calling my doctors, telling them I'm drug-seeking. She just admitted it on the phone. My voice cracked on the last word, and I had to take a shaky breath before continuing. 15 years, David. Every doctor since the accident. She's been sabotaging my medical care. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, David's voice came through, deadly quiet. She what? I recorded it. She thinks she was protecting me, or teaching me some kind of lesson. She said I was always Mom's favorite, and someone had to keep me grounded. The words felt like glass in my throat. She used her nursing credentials to make them take her seriously. Jesus Christ, Sarah. That's not protection, that's torture. You've been suffering for years because of her. I thought about all the nights I'd lain awake, my back screaming, taking ineffective over-the-counter medications and wondering what was wrong with me that no doctor would help. The physical therapy appointments that felt pointless because the real problem was never addressed. The way I'd started to doubt my own pain levels, wondering if maybe I really was being dramatic. David, there's more. I think this goes beyond just the phone calls. What do you mean, more? David's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. I stared at the dashboard, pieces clicking together with horrible clarity. Remember when I applied for that medical leave from Grafton Design 2 years ago? When my back got so bad I couldn't sit at a computer for more than 20 minutes. Yeah, HR kept asking for additional documentation. You had to see 3 different doctors for evaluations. Right. And remember how Jennifer was so helpful? She offered to call the HR department herself, said she could explain my condition in medical terms since I was too emotional about it. My stomach churned as I recalled how grateful I'd been for her intervention. David, what if she didn't help? What if she told them the same thing she told my doctors? The silence on the other end was deafening. My medical leave had been denied twice before finally being approved for a reduced 6 weeks instead of the 12 my primary care physician had recommended. I'd assumed it was standard corporate pushback, the kind of thing everyone dealt with when trying to use benefits. Sarah, didn't you say your insurance company questioned some of your physical therapy claims last year? That whole mess with Blue Cross. My blood turned to ice water. Oh my god. The memory hit like a physical blow. Jennifer asked me for my member ID number. She said she wanted to help me understand my coverage better, maybe find additional benefits I wasn't using. I gripped the phone tighter. She called them too. I know she did. The insurance nightmare had lasted 6 months. Suddenly, claims that had been routinely approved were being denied or flagged for review. My physical therapist's office had to resubmit paperwork multiple times, each rejection citing concerns about medical necessity and potential overutilization of services. I'd spent hours on hold with customer service representatives who kept mentioning reports from healthcare providers about my treatment patterns. I have to call Blue Cross, I said, already scrolling through my phone. I need to know exactly what she told them. Wait, Sarah. Before you do anything else, we need to document everything. If Jennifer's been interfering with your insurance, your employment, your medical care, this isn't just personal anymore. This could be criminal. Criminal. The word landed like a physical weight in my chest. My sister hadn't just betrayed me, she potentially committed fraud, impersonated medical professionals, interfered with my ability to work and receive healthcare. How many times had she identified herself as my case manager, or used her RN credentials to gain access to information in systems she had no right to manipulate? There's something else, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Remember when I got that weird call from workers' comp about my original claim from the accident? This was maybe 4 years ago. They said someone had contacted them with concerns about the validity of my injury. Jesus, Sarah. That claim took 2 years to settle. Didn't they make you see their own doctors for evaluation? 3 different doctors. All of them treated me like I was committing insurance fraud from the moment I walked in. The memory was crystal clear now, sitting in Dr. Hoffman's office while he barely glanced at my files, spending the entire appointment asking about my motivation for maintaining disability status and whether I had secondary gains from my injury. The caseworker kept mentioning reports from medical professionals who had concerns about my credibility. I thought about the settlement that had finally come through, a fraction of what my lawyer had initially projected. The workers' comp doctors had concluded my pain was largely psychological and not supported by objective findings, despite multiple MRIs showing clear disc damage. How long has she been doing this, David? How far back does this go? As if summoned by my question, my phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Had such a nice chat with you today. Love you, sis. Hope you're feeling better soon. 2 hearts. The casual cruelty of those heart emojis made me want to scream. I stared at Jennifer's text message until the words blurred together, and suddenly I was remembering something else, something I buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it hadn't happened. David, I need to call you back, I said, my voice hollow. Sarah, wait. I hung up and immediately dialed my mother's number. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice warm and familiar. Sweetheart. 2 calls in one day for my girls. Jennifer just called to check on how you're doing with your back problems. She's such a caring sister. The world tilted sideways. Mom, when did Jennifer call you? Oh, maybe 20 minutes ago. She was so worried about you, honey. She mentioned you've been doctor shopping again, trying to get stronger medications. Mom's voice took on that concerned tone I remembered from childhood lectures. She said she's been trying to help you find better doctors, but you keep getting frustrated when they won't give you what you want. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Mom, what exactly did she tell you? Well, she explained about your dependency issues. How you've been struggling with pill addiction since the accident, and how some doctors enable it while others try to help you get clean. There was a pause. Honey, why didn't you tell me it had gotten so bad? Jennifer said you've been to 16 different doctors in the past few years. The betrayal was so complete, so systematic, that for a moment I couldn't breathe. Jennifer hadn't just poisoned my medical care, she'd rewritten my entire narrative for our family. Every conversation I'd had with my parents about my struggles with pain management had been filtered through her lies. Mom, has Jennifer been telling you this for years? Since the accident, really. She was so worried when you started seeing all those specialists. She said doctor shopping is usually the first sign of addiction, and she felt responsible as a nurse to make sure our family got you proper help. Mom's voice softened. We've been so proud of how she's looked out for you, sweetheart. Not everyone has a medical professional in the family who cares enough to intervene. I thought about every family dinner where my parents had seemed oddly distant when I mentioned my pain. Every time they'd changed the subject when I talked about medical appointments. The way they'd stopped asking about my back entirely over the past few years, as if it were a shameful topic we all agreed not to discuss. Sarah. Are you still there? You know we love you no matter what, right? Jennifer says acknowledging the problem is the first step. I have to go, Mom. I ended the call before she could respond. My phone immediately started buzzing with texts from David, but I ignored them. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts until I found my brother Marcus's number. He lived in Portland now, and we only talked every few months, but suddenly I needed to know how deep this went. He picked up after 5 rings. Sarah. Is everything okay? It's not like you to call during work hours. Marcus, has Jennifer ever talked to you about my medical issues? Your back thing. Yeah, she mentions it sometimes when we talk. Why? His voice was cautious, like he was navigating a minefield. Are you having problems again? What has she told you exactly? There was a long pause. Sarah, look, I don't want to get in the middle of family drama, but Jennifer's worried about you. She says you've been having issues with pain medication dependency, and that you've been going to different doctors trying to get prescriptions. He cleared his throat uncomfortably. She asked me to keep an eye on you when you visit, watch for signs of, drug-seeking behavior. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering against the car door before I managed to catch it. Marcus, when did she first tell you this? God, I don't know. Years ago. Maybe 2015 or 2016. She made me promise not to bring it up with you directly because she said confrontation could trigger a relapse. 2015. 3 years before I'd even tried my first prescription pain medication. I stared at my phone screen, Marcus's words echoing in my head. 2015, Jennifer had been telling our family I was a drug addict 3 years before I'd ever taken anything stronger than Advil. Marcus, I said carefully, what exactly did Jennifer say about my problem back then? She said the accident had really messed you up mentally, not just physically. That you were becoming obsessed with finding doctors who would validate your pain instead of dealing with the psychological trauma. His voice was uncomfortable, like he was repeating something he'd memorized. She said addiction often starts that way, with legitimate injuries that people use to justify medication seeking. My vision blurred with rage. In 2015, I'd been working full-time at Morrison Graphics, running half marathons on weekends, and managing my back pain with occasional ibuprofen and yoga. I'd been proud of how well I'd recovered from the accident. I thought my family was proud too. Did she tell you I was already taking pills then? Not exactly pills, but she said you were constantly at doctor's appointments, pushing for stronger treatments, getting frustrated when they recommended conservative approaches. Marcus paused. Sarah, she showed me this chart once. She'd been tracking your medical visits, and it was a lot. Like 40-something appointments in 2 years. A chart. Jennifer had been documenting my medical care, creating evidence to support her false narrative. Those 40 appointments had been routine follow-ups with my primary care doctor, physical therapy sessions, and the second opinion consultations he'd recommended. Standard care for a spinal injury. But through Jennifer's lens, they became proof of obsessive doctor shopping. Marcus, I need you to think carefully. Has Jennifer ever asked you to do anything? Call anyone, or confirm anything about me? Well. He trailed off, and I could practically hear him reconsidering old conversations. Actually, yeah. A couple years ago, she asked me to call your old landlord. What was his name, Peterson? She said you'd applied for some kind of disability accommodation for your apartment, and he'd called her as your emergency contact to verify your medical situation. My blood turned to ice. I'd never applied for any accommodation with Mr. Peterson. But I remembered him treating me strangely during my last few months at that apartment, being oddly intrusive about my work schedule and asking pointed questions about my health situation. What did you tell Peterson? Just what Jennifer coached me to say, that you'd been struggling with chronic pain and it was affecting your daily functioning, but that you were getting help. Marcus's voice grew smaller. She said it would help you get the support you needed. I pressed my free hand against my forehead, trying to process the scope of Jennifer's manipulation. She hadn't just sabotaged my medical care, she'd orchestrated a comprehensive campaign to establish my reputation as an unstable, drug-seeking person across every area of my life. Marcus, did she ever ask you to contact my work? No, but... Another pause. She did ask me once if I thought your job was too stressful for someone with your issues. She mentioned that high-pressure environments can trigger relapse in people with dependency problems. When was this? Maybe 6 months before you left Morrison Graphics. She was asking if I thought you seemed stable enough to handle big projects, or if the company should maybe move you to something less demanding. I'd been laid off from Morrison Graphics in early 2018, despite consistently positive reviews and a portfolio that had won 3 industry awards. My supervisor, Janet Walsh, had been apologetic but vague about the decision. She'd mentioned concerns about reliability and long-term viability, phrases that had confused me at the time because I'd never missed a deadline or called in sick without legitimate reason. But if Jennifer had somehow planted seeds of doubt about my stability, my fitness for high-pressure work. Marcus, I have to go. But I need you to think about every conversation you've had with Jennifer about me over the past decade. Every favor she asked, every person she wanted you to talk to. Can you do that? Sarah, you're scaring me. What's going on? I'll call you back tonight. Just, please don't talk to Jennifer until then, okay? I hung up and immediately called David back. Thank God, he answered before the first ring finished. I was about to drive out there and find you. David, it's worse than we thought. She's been building a case against me for years, using Marcus and my parents as witnesses. She had him call my old landlord. She might have interfered with my job at Morrison. The words tumbled out in a rush. She's been creating a paper trail of fake evidence, and everyone believes it because she's a nurse and I'm just a crazy sister with back problems. Jesus. Sarah, where are you right now? Still pulled over on 101. I can't drive yet. My hands won't stop shaking. I'm leaving work. Stay right there, I'm coming to get you. David, what if she's done this to other people? What if I'm not the only one? The question hung in the air like smoke after David hung up, promising to reach me within the hour. What if Jennifer had done this to other people? What if her need to control and manipulate extended beyond just her inconvenient little sister? I found myself scrolling through my contacts until I landed on a name I hadn't called in 3 years, Emma Rodriguez, Jennifer's former roommate from nursing school. They'd had some kind of falling out around 2019, and Jennifer had never explained what happened. At the time, I'd assumed it was typical roommate drama. Emma picked up on the 4th ring, her voice surprised but warm. Sarah. Oh my God, hi. It's been forever. How are you? Hi Emma. Well, it's complicated. I wanted to ask you something about Jennifer, actually. About why you two stopped being friends. The warmth in Emma's voice immediately cooled. Oh. That. There was a long pause. Sarah, I don't want to put you in the middle of anything. Jennifer's your sister. Emma, please. I think Jennifer might have. I think she might have done something terrible to me, and I need to know if there's a pattern. Another pause, longer this time. When Emma spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. What kind of terrible? I took a breath and dove in. She's been calling my doctors for 15 years, telling them I'm a drug seeker. I just found out today. She recorded herself admitting it, thinking she was helping me or teaching me a lesson. The words still sounded surreal coming out of my mouth. Oh my God. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah, Jesus. That's exactly what she did to Michael. My heart stopped. Who's Michael? Michael Chin, no relation to you, I know the name's confusing. He was my boyfriend junior year of nursing school. He had Crohn's disease, needed regular pain management for flare-ups. Emma's voice grew stronger, like she'd been waiting years to tell this story. Jennifer became obsessed with the idea that he was faking his symptoms to get drugs. She started documenting things. Taking photos of him when he seemed fine, timing his bathroom visits, keeping track of when he took medication. The familiar chill of recognition ran down my spine. Did she contact his doctors? Worse. She reported him to the dean of students, claiming he was selling his prescription medications to other students. She had this whole file, photos, timestamps, even recordings of him talking about his pain levels that she'd somehow edited to make him sound like he was lying. My stomach dropped. What happened to him? The school launched an investigation. Michael had to provide medical records going back to childhood, submit to random drug screenings, meet with disciplinary committees. Even though he was eventually cleared, the stress triggered the worst Crohn's flare-up he'd ever had. He ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks and had to withdraw from nursing school. I pressed my hand against my mouth, feeling sick. Why did she do it? I think she was jealous. Michael was at the top of our class, and Jennifer wasn't. She kept saying things like, it's not fair that he gets accommodations when the rest of us have to tough it out, and someone needs to make sure he's not getting special treatment. Emma's voice hardened. But honestly, Sarah, I think she just enjoyed having power over someone. She liked being the one who saw through his act. Is that why you two stopped being friends? Partially. But what really ended it was when I realized she'd been doing the same thing to me. Emma's voice dropped. I have anxiety, and I've been seeing a counselor at the student health center. Jennifer somehow got access to my treatment records, I still don't know how, and started questioning whether I was stable enough for nursing school. She actually went to our clinical supervisor and suggested I needed additional psychological evaluation before working with patients. The scope of Jennifer's manipulation was becoming clearer, and it was terrifying. This wasn't just about me, or even about medical sabotage. This was about a person who systematically identified vulnerable people and destroyed their credibility, their support systems, their ability to get help. Emma, did you ever report her? I tried. But she was careful, and she was good at making herself look concerned rather than malicious. When I complained to the school administration, she'd already established herself as the responsible student looking out for patient safety. Emma's laugh was bitter. Plus, who were they going to believe? The anxious girl with mental health issues, or the straight-A student with perfect clinical evaluations? Perfect clinical evaluations. My sister, the model nurse, trusted by doctors and administrators. The same credentials she'd used to destroy my medical care for 15 years. Emma, do you think there were others? I know there were others. There was this girl in our pharmacology class, Jessica something, who had ADHD. Jennifer became convinced she was abusing her Adderall and started monitoring her study habits, reporting her to professors for erratic behavior. And there was a guy in our clinical rotation who had a back injury from a car accident. My blood turned to ice. What happened to him? Jennifer kept track of every time he took breaks during clinical rotations, every time he asked to modify physical tasks. She compiled reports about his drug-seeking behavior and submitted them to the nursing supervisor. He ended up having to transfer to a different program. A back injury from a car accident. Just like mine. I realized I was gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles had turned white. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Do you think Jennifer is still doing this? As a working nurse? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Sarah, Emma said finally, I've wondered about that for 4 years. The silence that followed Emma's admission felt like a physical weight pressing against my chest. I sat there on the side of Highway 101, watching cars blur past while my sister's betrayal expanded into something so much larger and more sinister than I'd imagined just hours ago. Emma, what do you mean you've wondered about it? There was this incident at Presbyterian General about 2 years ago. Jennifer works in their surgical recovery unit, and I have a friend who's a physician's assistant there, Lisa Montoya. Lisa mentioned this weird situation where several post-op patients complained that one of the nurses kept questioning their pain levels, suggesting they were exaggerating to get more medication. My hand started shaking again. Did Lisa say it was Jennifer specifically? Not at first. But when I described Jennifer to her, Lisa got this look on her face. She said there was a nurse who'd been filing reports about suspicious patient behavior, mostly people recovering from major surgeries who were requesting adequate pain relief. This nurse would document things like patient appears comfortable when unobserved or pain reports inconsistent with vital signs. I thought about Jennifer's voice on the recording, that casual satisfaction when she talked about giving doctors a heads up about my history. How many post-surgical patients had suffered because she decided their pain wasn't legitimate? Did anyone file complaints? That's the thing, patients usually don't know which specific nurse is influencing their care. They just know their doctors suddenly seem skeptical, their pain medication gets reduced, their requests for help get dismissed. Emma's voice grew tighter. Lisa said the hospital did some kind of internal review after patient satisfaction scores dropped in that unit, but I don't know what came of it. I was already typing Presbyterian General into my phone's notes app. Do you remember any other details? Dates, specific incidents? Lisa mentioned one case that really bothered her. A woman who'd had a double mastectomy, and someone kept reporting that she was exhibiting drug-seeking behavior because she requested pain medication on schedule instead of waiting to see if she could tough it out. Emma's voice cracked slightly. Sarah, this woman had just had both breasts surgically removed. Of course she needed pain medication. The cruelty of it made me dizzy. I imagined that woman, vulnerable and healing from major surgery, suddenly finding herself treated like a criminal for needing the pain relief any reasonable person would expect. Just like I'd been treated by 16 different doctors over 15 years. Emma, I need Lisa's contact information. I don't know if she'll talk to you. Hospital staff are usually pretty careful about discussing internal situations with outsiders. I have to try. And Emma. I think I need to contact some of those people from nursing school. Michael, Jessica, the guy with the back injury. If Jennifer's still doing this as a working nurse, if she's hurting patients. I swallowed hard. Someone has to stop her. Jesus, Sarah. You're talking about going up against a registered nurse with 15 years of experience and perfect employment reviews. Even if you can prove what she did to you, proving she's harmed patients at her job, that's going to be nearly impossible. She was right, but I couldn't let that stop me. What was Michael's last name again? Chen. Michael Chen. Last I heard, he was working as a medical technician in Sacramento. He never went back to nursing school after what Jennifer did to him. I added his name to my notes. And the others? Jessica Martinez was the one with ADHD. I think she's on Facebook. The guy with the back injury was, God, what was his name? Thomas something. Thomas Reed? Thomas Reeves? He was quiet, kind of kept to himself after Jennifer started targeting him. 3 more lives Jennifer had systematically damaged, and those were just the ones Emma knew about. How many others had there been over the years? How many patients at Presbyterian General had suffered because my sister appointed herself the arbiter of who deserved compassion? There's something else, Emma said quietly. Lisa mentioned that this nurse, the one filing all the reports, seemed to particularly target patients who reminded her of someone. Young women with back injuries, people with chronic pain conditions, anyone who seemed entitled to pain relief. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. Jennifer hadn't just been sabotaging me, she'd been using her position at the hospital to sabotage anyone who reminded her of me. Every patient who came through her unit with a back injury, every young woman requesting adequate pain management, became a proxy for her anger toward her little sister. My phone buzzed with a text from David, 20 minutes away. Are you okay? I wasn't okay. I was sitting in my car on the side of a highway, discovering that my sister was potentially a serial abuser who'd spent over a decade using her medical credentials to torture vulnerable people. But I was also feeling something I hadn't experienced in years, validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't a drug seeker. I wasn't a failure at being sick. I was a victim of systematic medical sabotage perpetrated by someone who was supposed to love and protect me. Emma, will you help me? Will you help me document what Jennifer did in nursing school, help me find the other people she hurt? Sarah, are you sure about this? Going after Jennifer, she's not going to take it quietly. And she's really good at making herself look like the victim. I thought about the recording on my phone, 18 minutes of Jennifer casually admitting to 15 years of medical interference. I thought about the patients at Presbyterian General who might be suffering right now because my sister decided they didn't deserve adequate pain relief. I'm sure. Someone has to stop her. After Emma and I hung up, I sat staring at my phone with a growing sense of dread. If Jennifer had been targeting patients at Presbyterian General, there had to be documentation somewhere. Hospitals kept meticulous records of everything, including nursing reports and patient complaints. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with in my own medical files. I called Dr. Martinez's office, the one who dismissed me after 2 appointments in 2021. The receptionist, Kelly, had always been kind to me, and I was hoping she might still be there. Peninsula Medical Group, this is Kelly. Hi Kelly, this is Sarah Chin. I was a patient of Dr. Martinez's a few years ago, and I need to request copies of my complete medical records, including any notes about phone calls or communications from third parties. There was a pause. Oh, hi Sarah. I remember you. Let me pull up your file. I heard typing in the background. Okay, I can get those records together for you. There's quite a bit here, it looks like there are several documented phone communications from. She paused, from your sister, Jennifer Chin, RN. She called multiple times expressing concerns about your medication-seeking behavior and requesting that we coordinate your care with your previous providers. My stomach clenched. How many times did she call, Kelly? Let me see, looks like 4 separate calls over 3 weeks in March 2021. She also faxed over some kind of documentation about your history with other providers. Kelly's voice grew quieter. Sarah, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but those calls really influenced how Dr. Martinez approached your case. Your sister seemed very knowledgeable and concerned. 4 calls in 3 weeks. Jennifer had essentially launched a campaign against me before I'd even had my first appointment with Dr. Martinez. Kelly, what kind of documentation did she fax? It was a timeline of your medical visits dating back several years, with notes about your behavior at various appointments and concerns about doctor shopping. She presented it as a nursing assessment of a family member's deteriorating condition. Kelly paused. Your sister was very professional about it. She said she was trying to help coordinate your care and make sure providers had complete information about your history. A timeline. Jennifer had been maintaining actual files on me, creating fake medical assessments to support her sabotage. This wasn't just casual interference, this was systematic fraud. Kelly, I need you to include everything in those records. Every phone call, every fax, every note. This is extremely important. Of course. Sarah, is everything okay? You sound upset. I almost laughed at the understatement. Everything is definitely not okay. How quickly can you get me those records? I can have them ready this afternoon if you want to pick them up. The full file is pretty extensive. After hanging up with Kelly, I immediately called Dr. Chen's office from 2020. Then Dr. Williams from 2019. Then Dr. Kim. Each conversation followed the same horrifying pattern: multiple phone calls from Jennifer, detailed faxed reports about my medication-seeking behavior, professional nursing assessments that painted me as an addict doctor shopping for pills. Dr. Kim's office administrator, Maria, was the most forthcoming. Your sister was very thorough, Miss Chen. She provided a complete list of all the doctors you'd seen, with specific dates and her observations about your behavior at each appointment. She also included documentation of your family's concerns about your addiction issues. What kind of observations? Let me pull the file. Okay, here it is. She noted things like, patient becomes agitated when not immediately prescribed controlled substances, and patient has unrealistic expectations for pain relief, and patient shows signs of tolerance, requiring increasingly strong medications. Maria read the notes in a neutral tone, but each word felt like a physical blow. None of it was true. I'd never been prescribed controlled substances by most of these doctors. I'd never become agitated in medical appointments. But Jennifer had created a fictional version of me, complete with specific behavioral observations that sounded clinical and credible. Maria, did Dr. Kim ever verify any of this information with other providers? Well, your sister included contact information for several of your previous doctors and encouraged Dr. Kim to call them for verification. She said most providers would be reluctant to share information without a family member initiating the conversation. The scope of Jennifer's manipulation was breathtaking. She hadn't just called my current doctors, she'd created a network of misinformation that reinforced itself across multiple providers. Each doctor she contacted became another source to verify her lies to the next doctor. My phone rang. David. I'm here, babe. I can see your car. Are you ready to go home? I looked in my rearview mirror and saw David's Honda pulling up behind me. The sight of him made me want to cry with relief. David, it's so much worse than we thought. She's been creating actual files on me, sending fake nursing assessments to my doctors, building a network of providers who all believe her lies about my addiction. I gathered my purse and phone, preparing to get into David's car. She's not just a sister who made some phone calls. She's been conducting a 15-year campaign of medical fraud. As I climbed into David's passenger seat, my phone buzzed with another text from Jennifer. Hope you got home safe. Let me know if you need anything. Maybe we can grab dinner this weekend. I found this great article about non-pharmaceutical pain management I want to share with you. Red heart. The casual cruelty of it made me want to scream. The text from Jennifer sat on my phone screen like a taunt as David drove us home, her heart emoji mocking me with its fake sweetness. But it was the mention of non-pharmaceutical pain management that made my blood boil. Even now, even after admitting to sabotaging my medical care, she was still pushing the narrative that I didn't deserve real treatment. David, I need to call my lawyer, I said, staring out the passenger window. This isn't just family drama anymore. This is fraud, maybe even criminal interference with medical care. Do you still have Rebecca Martinez's number? She handled our house closing, she might know someone who specializes in this kind of case. I was already scrolling through my contacts when my phone rang. The caller ID made my stomach drop. Presbyterian General Hospital. This is Sarah Chen. Ms. Chen, this is Linda Walsh from Human Resources at Presbyterian General. I understand you've been asking questions about one of our nursing staff members, Jennifer Chen. Are you related to Jennifer? My heart hammered against my ribs. She's my sister. Who told you I was asking questions? We received a call about an hour ago from someone claiming to be investigating Jennifer's professional conduct. The caller said they were working with family members to document concerning behavior. Linda's voice was crisp, professional, but I could hear the underlying suspicion. Ms. Chen, I need to ask, are you aware of anyone filing complaints against your sister? The room started spinning. I pressed my hand against my forehead, trying to think clearly. Linda, I haven't filed any complaints yet, and I haven't authorized anyone to call on my behalf. Who exactly called you? The person identified themselves as Michael Chen, said he was working with other former nursing school colleagues to investigate your sister's history of filing false reports about patients and fellow students. Linda paused. He claimed to have documentation going back to 2016. Michael Chen. Emma's ex-boyfriend from nursing school, the one Jennifer had destroyed with false accusations. But how had he gotten involved so quickly? Emma and I had only talked 2 hours ago. Linda, I need to be completely honest with you. I just discovered today that my sister has been interfering with my medical care for 15 years. I asked a former classmate of hers for information, and that classmate mentioned Michael Chen as another person Jennifer had targeted. But I haven't spoken to Michael, and I didn't ask him to contact your hospital. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Ms. Chen, are you saying someone is impersonating Mr. Chen? A horrible possibility occurred to me. Linda, when this person called claiming to be Michael Chen, did they provide any verification? Employee ID, social security number, anything like that? Well, no. He seemed very knowledgeable about Jennifer's history, and he provided specific details about incidents from nursing school that seemed credible. Linda's voice grew uncertain. He said he was calling as a courtesy to warn us about potential patient safety issues. My hand started shaking again. What kind of specific details? Information about reports Jennifer filed against fellow students, dates of incidents, names of supervisors who were involved in disciplinary actions. Linda was clearly reading from notes. He also mentioned that Jennifer had a pattern of targeting students and patients with chronic pain conditions, particularly back injuries. Only 3 people knew those details: Emma, Michael Chen himself, and Jennifer. Linda, I think my sister called you. I think Jennifer called pretending to be Michael Chen to find out if anyone was investigating her. The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. She's been monitoring my activities, and she probably realized I was going to expose what she's done. Ms. Chen, that's a very serious accusation. I know it sounds crazy, but Jennifer has been impersonating medical professionals and manipulating information for years. She's documented every doctor I've seen, created fake nursing assessments, even interfered with my insurance claims. I gripped the phone tighter. She would absolutely call your HR department pretending to be someone else if she thought it would help her control the narrative. David had pulled into our driveway and was staring at me with a mixture of concern and rage. I put the call on speaker so he could hear. Linda, can you tell me exactly what this person said about Jennifer's current work performance? He claimed there had been complaints about Jennifer questioning patients' pain levels inappropriately, and that several post-operative patients had reported feeling dismissed or accused of exaggerating their symptoms. Linda's voice grew more cautious. He said he had documentation of these complaints and wanted to know if we were aware of any patterns in patient satisfaction scores. That was information Michael Chen wouldn't have had access to. But Jennifer would know exactly what complaints had been filed about her work performance, exactly what her supervisors might be watching for. Linda, I need you to do me a favor. Can you call the number this person gave you for Michael Chen and see if it connects to the real Michael Chen? I suppose I could do that. And Linda? If I'm right, if my sister has been calling you pretending to be someone else, that means she's actively trying to cover up potential misconduct. You might want to start documenting these conversations very carefully. After hanging up with Linda, I sat in our driveway feeling like the world had tilted off its axis. Jennifer wasn't just trying to hide her past behavior, she was actively working to discredit any investigation before it could begin. David, she knows. She knows I'm onto her, and she's already trying to get ahead of it. I showed him Jennifer's text about dinner this weekend. Look at this. She's acting like nothing happened, but she's also trying to control when and how we interact. Sarah, we need to assume she's monitoring everything now. Your phone calls, your contacts, maybe even your location. David's voice was grim. If she's willing to impersonate people to hospital HR departments, there's no limit to how far she'll go to protect herself. As if summoned by his words, my phone buzzed with a new text from Jennifer. Just heard from a friend at Presbyterian General that someone's been spreading false rumors about me at work. Family is so important during difficult times. Can't wait to see you this weekend and clear up any misunderstandings. 2 hearts. She wasn't even pretending anymore. The message was a clear threat disguised as sisterly concern. Jennifer knew exactly what I was doing, and she was letting me know that she was already 10 steps ahead. I stared at Jennifer's threatening text for a full minute before something clicked into place. The timing was too perfect. Linda from Presbyterian General had called me less than an hour after my conversation with Emma, and now Jennifer was texting about false rumors at her workplace. David, I think Jennifer's been listening to my phone calls. What do you mean, listening? I pulled up my recent call log, scanning the numbers. Remember 3 years ago when I kept having problems with my phone? Calls dropping, battery draining faster than normal, weird echo sounds during conversations. Yeah, you thought it was a network issue. You even switched carriers. Jennifer offered to help me troubleshoot it. She said she'd learned about phone diagnostics from some tech-savvy nurses at work. My stomach churned as the memory crystallized. She borrowed my phone for like 2 hours, said she was running some kind of diagnostic software to identify the problem. David went pale. Jesus, Sarah. You think she installed spyware? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Emma Rodriguez. Sarah, we have a problem, Emma said without preamble. I just got off the phone with Michael Chen. Someone called Presbyterian General this afternoon claiming to be him, asking about Jennifer's work performance. I know. The hospital called me. Emma, I think it was Jennifer herself making that call. That's what Michael thinks too. But Sarah, there's more. Michael said he got a weird voicemail yesterday from someone claiming to be doing a story about nursing school hazing. They wanted to interview him about his experiences with fellow students filing false reports. Emma's voice was tight with anxiety. He didn't return the call, but he saved the message. The voice sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it until I described Jennifer to him. My hands were shaking again. She's been calling people, fishing for information about who might be willing to speak against her. It gets worse. Michael gave me the number from his caller ID, and I had my cousin run it through a reverse lookup. He works in telecom. Sarah, the call came from a spoofed number that traced back to a VoIP service registered under the name Medical Research Associates. Jennifer hadn't just been passively monitoring the situation. She'd been actively investigating anyone who might expose her, using fake identities and professional-sounding company names to extract information. Emma, did Michael remember any specific questions this person asked? They wanted to know if he'd kept any documentation from nursing school, if he'd ever filed formal complaints, and whether he'd been in contact with other students who had problems with Jennifer. Emma paused. They also asked if he'd been approached by any family members recently. That last question made my blood run cold. Jennifer had somehow known I would start reaching out to her victims before I'd even decided to do it myself. There's something else, Emma continued. I called Jessica Martinez, the girl with ADHD from our pharmacology class. She said she got a similar call last week, but from someone claiming to be from the state nursing board investigating reports of student misconduct. They asked her detailed questions about any complaints she might have filed against classmates. I looked at David, who was taking notes on his phone. How many people do you think she's called? I don't know, but Sarah, we need to assume she has a complete list of everyone who might have information about her past behavior. She's been systematically contacting potential witnesses and gathering intelligence about what they know. My phone buzzed with another text from Jennifer. Sarah, I've been thinking about our conversation today, and I'm worried I didn't explain things clearly. Sometimes family members can misunderstand when medical professionals try to help coordinate care. Would you like me to call Dr. Martinez's office and clarify the situation? I'd hate for there to be any confusion about my intentions. Love you. 2 hearts. The message was clearly a response to my records request from Dr. Martinez's office. Jennifer somehow knew I'd called Kelly asking for documentation of her phone calls and faxes. David, she's monitoring everything. My calls, my location, probably my texts. I held up the phone showing Jennifer's message. She knows I requested my medical records from Dr. Martinez. Sarah, we need to get you a new phone and assume your current one is completely compromised. And we need to do it without her knowing. As we sat in our driveway planning our next moves, I realized Jennifer had spent 15 years building a comprehensive surveillance and sabotage operation targeting her own sister. This wasn't just medical interference, it was stalking, fraud, and systematic psychological warfare conducted by someone with intimate knowledge of medical systems and professional credibility that made her nearly untouchable. But she'd made one critical mistake. She recorded herself confessing, and now I had 18 minutes of evidence that could bring down her entire house of cards. The new burner phone David bought me felt foreign in my hands as I sat in the parking lot of a Starbucks 15 miles from our house, waiting for my contact at the state nursing board to call back. We'd driven here in his coworker's borrowed car, leaving both our phones at home after discovering the spyware Jennifer had installed on mine 3 years ago. Sarah Chin. The voice was crisp, professional. This is Margaret Holbrook from the California Board of Registered Nursing. I understand you have concerns about a licensed nurse's conduct. I took a shaky breath. Yes, ma'am. I need to report my sister, Jennifer Chin, RN. License number. I read from the information I'd printed at the library. She's been systematically interfering with my medical care for 15 years, and I believe she's done the same to patients at Presbyterian General Hospital. That's a very serious allegation, Ms. Chin. Do you have documentation to support these claims? I have a recorded phone conversation where she admits to calling my doctors and telling them I'm a drug seeker. I also have medical records from multiple providers showing her interventions. I gripped the phone tighter. But there's more. I think she's been targeting patients who remind her of me. MS. Chen, I need to stop you there. Margaret's tone shifted. We received a call yesterday from someone claiming to represent you. A Jennifer Chen, who said she was concerned about false accusations being made against her by a family member struggling with substance abuse issues. The parking lot seemed to tilt sideways. She called you already. She provided what appeared to be compelling evidence of your difficulties, including medical records indicating multiple attempts to obtain controlled substances from different providers. Papers rustled in the background. She expressed concern that you might file false reports against her in retaliation for her attempts to help coordinate your addiction treatment. My vision blurred with rage. Ms. Holbrook, Jennifer has been creating fake medical records about me for years. She's been impersonating medical professionals, interfering with my insurance claims, and lying to my family about non-existent drug problems. My voice cracked. She called you pretending to represent me so she could control the narrative before I could file a real complaint. These are extremely serious allegations, Ms. Chin. However, I'm required to inform you that filing false reports against a healthcare professional is a crime. Given the documentation we've already received regarding your history. What documentation exactly? I interrupted. Medical assessments spanning several years, indicating patterns of doctor shopping, medication-seeking behavior, and family concerns about substance abuse. There are also reports of erratic behavior, including threats against medical staff who refused to prescribe requested medications. None of it was true, but Jennifer had spent over a decade creating a paper trail that supported every lie. She documented fake incidents, forged family statements, and built a comprehensive fictional narrative about her addicted sister who might lash out against the responsible nurse trying to help her. MS. Holbrook, I have proof. I recorded Jennifer admitting to everything. She confessed to calling my doctors, to sabotaging my medical care, to using her nursing credentials to make them believe her lies. I'd be willing to review any evidence you have, but I must warn you that we take false reporting very seriously. Given your sister's standing as a registered nurse with 15 years of exemplary service and no prior complaints. No prior complaints. My voice rose. What about the patient satisfaction issues in her unit? The reports about her questioning post-operative patients' pain levels. Silence. Then, Ms. Chen, how do you know about internal hospital personnel matters? I realized my mistake immediately. Jennifer had fed me that information during our recorded call, probably knowing I'd eventually repeat it and sound like I was making wild accusations based on insider knowledge I shouldn't have had access to. I, a former classmate, mentioned hearing about problems. Ms. Chen, I think it would be best if you took some time to consider the seriousness of what you're alleging. If you still wish to file a formal complaint after reviewing the potential consequences of false reporting, please submit your evidence in writing through our official channels. The line went dead. I sat staring at the burner phone, realizing Jennifer had successfully poisoned another well before I'd even approached it. David looked up from his laptop, where he'd been researching medical malpractice attorneys. What happened? She got there first. She called the nursing board yesterday, told them I'm a drug addict who might file false reports against her out of spite. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. David, she's been planning this for years. Every lie she told, every fake document she created, it was all building toward this moment when I'd finally figure out what she was doing and try to stop her. My sister hadn't just been sabotaging my medical care. She'd been building an impenetrable defense against the day her victims would try to fight back. The burner phone rang again 20 minutes later. I almost didn't answer, expecting another dead end, but the caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Sarah. This is Lisa Montoya from Presbyterian General. Emma Rodriguez gave me your number. The voice was cautious but urgent. I heard you've been asking questions about Jennifer Chin. My heart jumped. Yes, I'm her sister. Emma mentioned you might have information about patient complaints. I can't talk long, I'm on break and I don't want this traced back to me. But Sarah, you need to know that Jennifer didn't just file reports about suspicious patients. She's been accessing medical records she has no business looking at. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you mean accessing records? Our system logs every time someone opens a patient file. Jennifer's been pulling records for patients who aren't assigned to her unit, specifically young women with back injuries, chronic pain patients, anyone who comes in with the kind of injuries you described Emma telling me about. My blood ran cold. How many records? I pulled the audit logs yesterday after Emma called me. Over the past 2 years, Jennifer accessed 127 patient files outside her assigned cases. Most of them were flagged in the system afterward with notes about medication-seeking behavior or pain inconsistent with presentation. David leaned closer so he could hear. Lisa, is that legal? Can nurses access any patient's records? Absolutely not. We're only supposed to access files for patients under our direct care, and every access is logged and audited. What Jennifer's been doing could get her fired and criminally charged. Lisa's voice dropped to a whisper. But here's the really disturbing part, I cross-referenced the files she accessed with patient satisfaction scores. Every single patient whose records Jennifer viewed ended up filing complaints about feeling dismissed, not believed, or inadequately treated for pain. The scope of Jennifer's cruelty was expanding beyond anything I'd imagined. She wasn't just targeting me anymore, she was using her position to systematically torture dozens of vulnerable patients. Lisa, do you have copies of these audit logs? I printed them yesterday, but Sarah, I need you to understand something. If I come forward with this information, Jennifer will know it came from me. She's got connections throughout the hospital administration, and I'm just a PA. She could destroy my career. What if I told you she's been doing this for 15 years? That she started with fellow nursing students and has been escalating ever since. I took a shaky breath. Lisa, I think Jennifer is using her job to live out some kind of twisted fantasy where she gets to decide who deserves help and who doesn't. Jesus. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Sarah, there's something else. Last month, Jennifer volunteered to help with our new electronic records training. She specifically requested to work on the modules about patient privacy and access controls. David and I exchanged looks. Why is that significant? Because it gave her administrative access to the system for 3 weeks. She could have modified existing records, created false documentation, even planted evidence to support her reports about patient behavior. Lisa's voice was barely audible now. Sarah, what if Jennifer hasn't just been filing false reports? What if she's been actually altering medical records to make her lies look true? The parking lot felt like it was spinning around me. If Jennifer had been modifying electronic medical records, then every piece of evidence I gathered from my doctors might be compromised. She could have planted fake notes about my behavior, altered documentation of her phone calls, even created false drug screening results to support her narrative about my addiction. Lisa, I need those audit logs. And I need the contact information for every patient whose records Jennifer accessed without authorization. My voice was steadier than I felt. Because I think we're going to need an army of victims to take her down. After Lisa agreed to meet us the next morning with copies of the audit logs, David and I drove to the storage unit where I kept old paperwork from my move 3 years ago. If Jennifer had been altering electronic records, I needed original documentation from before she gained administrative access to Presbyterian General System. The dusty box labeled Medical 2018 to 2020 contained a horror show I'd forgotten about. Insurance denial letters that made no sense at the time. A workers' compensation review that had somehow turned adversarial despite clear documentation of my injury. And buried at the bottom, a letter from Blue Cross dated March 15, 2019, that made my hands shake as I read it. David, listen to this. I held the letter under the storage unit's fluorescent light. Dear Ms. Chen, based on information received from healthcare professionals familiar with your case, we are conducting a comprehensive review of your claims history. Multiple providers have expressed concerns about patterns consistent with benefit abuse and potential coordination of benefits fraud. Benefit abuse? David looked up from the box of workers' comp documents he was sorting through. Sarah, you've never abused anything. You couldn't even get basic coverage for physical therapy. I kept reading. It says here that medical professionals with direct knowledge of your case have provided documentation suggesting systematic attempts to obtain coverage for treatments not medically necessary. My voice cracked. They froze all my benefits for 6 months while they investigated. That investigation had nearly bankrupted us. I'd been forced to pay out of pocket for physical therapy while Blue Cross conducted their review, racking up $8,000 in debt that took 2 years to pay off. The final determination had been in my favor, but the stress and financial strain had been devastating. Who do you think provided that documentation? David asked, though we both knew the answer. I found my answer in the next document, a faxed letter to Blue Cross on Presbyterian General Hospital letterhead, dated March 8, 2019. The signature at the bottom read, J. Chen, RN, Case Coordinator. She created a fake position, I whispered. Look at this, she's signing as my case coordinator like it's an official role. She sent Blue Cross a 3-page report about my escalating medication-seeking behavior and attempts to manipulate the healthcare system for financial gain. The report was chillingly detailed. Jennifer had documented fake conversations with my doctors, fabricated incidents of me becoming hostile when denied controlled substances, and even included a timeline of my medical appointments with false notes about my behavior at each visit. She presented it as a nursing assessment conducted on behalf of my treatment team. David was staring at a workers' compensation document with a similar letterhead. Sarah, she did the same thing to your workers' comp claim. Look at this, another report signed J. Chen, RN, Medical Case Manager, dated June 2020. She told them you were exaggerating your limitations and working under the table while collecting benefits. I remembered that workers' comp review. The investigator had been suspicious from the first phone call, asking pointed questions about whether I was really as disabled as claimed and demanding surveillance footage from my apartment complex. The claim had eventually been settled, but for a fraction of what my attorney had projected. She's been impersonating different medical professionals for years, I said, flipping through more documents. Case coordinator, medical case manager, nursing supervisor, she creates whatever title she needs to sound authoritative. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer, Hi sis. I've been thinking more about our conversation yesterday. I'm worried you might have misunderstood some things I said. Would you like me to call your current doctor and clarify? I'd hate for there to be any confusion that might affect your care. Let me know. 2 hearts. The message felt like ice water in my veins. Jennifer was offering to call Dr. Patel, the pain specialist I'd finally found 6 months ago, the first doctor in years who'd actually listened to me and started me on a treatment plan that was working. David, she knows about Dr. Patel. She knows I'm finally getting proper treatment. I showed him the text. This isn't just about the past anymore. She's threatening to destroy the one good medical relationship I've managed to build. Before David could respond, my phone rang. Dr. Patel's office. Ms. Chen. This is Amanda from Dr. Patel's office. We just received some concerning information about your medical history, and Dr. Patel would like to schedule an urgent consultation to discuss your treatment plan. My worst nightmare was happening in real time. Jennifer hadn't waited for my response to her text, she'd already called Dr. Patel's office. Amanda, what kind of concerning information? We received a call from a nursing professional who identified herself as your sister. She provided documentation about your history with multiple providers and expressed concerns about potential medication dependency issues. Amanda's voice was carefully neutral. Dar. Patel wants to review this information with you before continuing your current prescription protocol. I closed my eyes, feeling 15 years of medical sabotage crashing down on me again. Just when I'd finally found a doctor who believed me, who was helping me reclaim my life from chronic pain, Jennifer had swooped in to destroy it. Amanda, the person who called you has been systematically lying to my doctors for 15 years. I have recorded evidence of her admitting to medical interference. My voice was shaking with rage. She's not trying to help me, she's been torturing me. Ms. Chen, these are very serious allegations. Dr. Patel would like to see you tomorrow morning at 9 to discuss the situation. Can you bring any documentation you mentioned? I looked at David, who was furiously taking notes. Jennifer had just made her biggest mistake yet. By targeting Dr. Patel, she'd finally interfered with a medical relationship in real time, while I was prepared to fight back. Yes, I'll be there at 9. And Amanda? I'll be bringing my attorney. The attorney David found, Rebecca Santos, specialized in medical malpractice and healthcare fraud. She agreed to meet us at 7 a.m., 2 hours before my appointment with Dr. Patel, in the parking lot of a diner 20 minutes from the medical center. This is the most systematic case of medical sabotage I've ever seen, Rebecca said after reviewing the recordings, documents, and Lisa's audit logs from Presbyterian General. Your sister hasn't just been interfering with your care, she's been conducting identity fraud, impersonating medical professionals, and potentially violating HIPAA regulations on a massive scale. I clutched my coffee cup, watching early morning commuters stream past the diner windows. But Rebecca, she's already poisoned the nursing board against me. She's got 15 years of fake documentation that makes me look like an unstable drug seeker. How do we fight that? We start with Dr. Patel. Jennifer made a critical error by calling him while you're prepared to respond immediately. Rebecca pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. She's been operating under the assumption that her victims would never be able to coordinate a defense. But now we have real-time evidence of her interference, combined with historical documentation of her pattern of behavior. David leaned forward. What about the patients at Presbyterian General? Lisa said Jennifer accessed 127 unauthorized files. That's our smoking gun. Healthcare workers who access patient records without legitimate reason face federal charges under HIPAA. If we can prove Jennifer used that information to file false reports about patients. Rebecca's eyes lit up. Sarah, your sister may have just handed us a class action case. My phone buzzed with another text from Jennifer. Sarah, I hope you got my message yesterday. I called Dr. Patel's office to help clarify some things about your medical history. I know you sometimes get overwhelmed in medical appointments, so I wanted to make sure he had all the information he needs to treat you safely. Family has to look out for each other. See you this weekend. Red heart. The casual cruelty of it made me want to scream. She was describing her sabotage as helpful clarification, rewriting her interference as sisterly concern. She's documenting her own crimes, Rebecca observed, reading the text over my shoulder. She's so confident in her system that she's admitting to medical interference in writing. At 8:45 a.m., we walked into Dr. Patel's office with 3 boxes of documentation, Rebecca's legal credentials, and the recorded confession that had started this nightmare 24 hours ago. Amanda, the receptionist, looked nervous as she ushered us into Dr. Patel's consultation room. Ms. Chen, Dr. Patel said, his usually warm demeanor replaced by professional concern. I received some very troubling information about your medical history yesterday. Before we continue your treatment, I need to understand what's been happening. Dr. Patel, I need you to listen to something before we discuss anything else. I pulled out my phone and played Jennifer's recorded confession, watching his expression change from concern to horror as my sister casually described 15 years of systematic medical sabotage. When the recording ended, Dr. Patel sat in stunned silence for nearly a minute. Dr. Patel, Rebecca interjected, my client has been the victim of ongoing medical fraud perpetrated by her sister, a registered nurse who has been impersonating medical professionals and filing false reports for over a decade. The call you received yesterday was part of this pattern of abuse. Dr. Patel looked at the boxes of documentation, then back at me. Sarah, how long has this been happening? Since I was 18, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Every doctor I've seen since my car accident. She's been following me, calling ahead, poisoning every medical relationship before it could begin. And now, Rebecca added, she's escalating because Sarah is finally receiving appropriate treatment. Jennifer Chen sees your successful pain management as a threat to the narrative she spent 15 years building. Dr. Patel picked up Jennifer's faxed report from yesterday, scanning the fabricated timeline of my medication-seeking behavior. His face darkened as he read. This document claims you've been to 43 different providers in the past 5 years, requesting increasingly strong medications, he said. Sarah, you've been my patient for 6 months, and your medication compliance has been exemplary. You've never requested increases, never exhibited any concerning behavior. Because I'm not an addict, I said, tears finally spilling over. I'm just someone with a back injury whose sister decided to torture her for 15 years. Dr. Patel closed Jennifer's fabricated report and looked directly at me. Sarah, I want you to know that nothing your sister told my office yesterday will affect your treatment. In fact, I'm going to document this interference in your medical record as evidence of the systematic abuse you've described. The relief was so overwhelming I started crying right there in his office. For the first time in 15 years, a doctor was choosing to believe me over Jennifer. Dr. Patel, Rebecca interjected, would you be willing to provide a statement about the false information you received? We're building a case against Jennifer Chen that could help dozens of other victims. Absolutely. And I'll be reporting this to Presbyterian General's administration immediately. 3 weeks later, I stood in the lobby of the California Board of Registered Nursing with Rebecca, Lisa Montoya, and 6 other victims we tracked down, including Michael Chen, who'd driven down from Sacramento to testify. The audit logs from Presbyterian General had revealed the full scope of Jennifer's crimes, 127 unauthorized patient record accesses, leading to documented interference in the care of 89 different patients. Margaret Holbrook, the same woman who'd initially dismissed my concerns, now looked grim as she reviewed the mountain of evidence we'd assembled. Ms. Chen, she said, addressing me directly, I owe you an apology. The documentation your sister provided when she called us was extremely sophisticated and convincing. We had no reason to suspect it was fabricated. Jennifer spent 15 years perfecting her lies, I replied. She knew exactly how to manipulate the system because she was part of it. The hearing took 6 hours. Jennifer sat across the room with her attorney, maintaining her composure even as witness after witness described how she'd systematically destroyed their medical care, their insurance coverage, their ability to receive treatment for legitimate conditions. When Lisa testified about the unauthorized record accesses, presenting printouts showing Jennifer had targeted patients based on specific injury types, Jennifer's attorney actually put his head in his hands. The final blow came when Rebecca played the original recording, 18 minutes of Jennifer casually admitting to keeping me grounded by telling my doctors I was a drug seeker. The hearing officer's face went white as Jennifer's voice filled the room, describing her medical interference with the same tone she'd used to discuss grocery shopping. The board's decision was unanimous: immediate license revocation, $50,000 in fines, and referral to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. 6 months later, Jennifer pled guilty to healthcare fraud, identity theft, and HIPAA violations. She received 2 years in prison and was ordered to pay restitution to 89 patients whose care she'd interfered with. The judge called it one of the most systematic cases of medical sabotage he'd ever seen. Presbyterian General settled our class action lawsuit for $2.3 million, distributed among the patients Jennifer had targeted. My portion was $180,000, not enough to compensate for 15 years of pain and gaslighting, but enough to pay off the medical debt her interference had caused. The best victory, though, was personal. My medical records have been cleared of Jennifer's fabricated reports. Dr. Patel's treatment plan has reduced my daily pain from an 8 to a manageable 3. I sleep through the night now. I can work full days without sobbing in my car afterward. Last week, I got a letter from Michael Chin. He's back in nursing school, finally pursuing the career Jennifer destroyed years ago. He thanked me for having the courage to speak up, for breaking the silence that had protected her for so long. My sister destroyed 15 years of my life, but she couldn't destroy who I really was underneath all that pain. I'm not a drug seeker. I'm not a liar. I'm not crazy. I'm a survivor who fought back and won.